Welcome back to Primary Target, episode 19. I'm your host, Who the Fuck, joined as always by my co-host Vargren and our special returning guest, Valasius slash Baller Tom. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, popular demand demanded that I demand you to come back. So, backed by popular demand, you're back for part two. And I'm happy about that because part one was really good. So, I guess we should pick up where we left off. I think last time we were talking about sort of your beginning times in Pos Party, where you like joined and you were living out of a Pos and you were just like trying to bring Solo back. And I know that you developed most of your Eve career through Pos Party. So I'm curious to know about more of your time there. What do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, when I joined, I mentioned this in the last episode too, but I started out as a Logi pilot. I thought the Guardian was the most awesome looking ship in the game. Like the default skin, where I think it's actually the Sauron Prime for other ships. I think the default skin of the Guardian just looks so good. And
like crisp red and gold, looking like a fucking flying Iron Man helmet.
And I always appreciate having more responsibility and more risk. I think to me that it just makes it more fun. So I started out lodging and eventually being like the Logi anchor, making the calls. I was really inspired by one video to do this. I don't know if he plays the game anymore, but his name is Duck. He was in a corp called Black Omega Security. And
I remember them.
yeah, they lived in Syndicate for a long time. They were one of our biggest enemies, but he made a video called That's Logistics, and I was very much so inspired by that to get involved in the organizational side of flying, space healers. So for almost all the fights originally, I wasn't actually FCing, and I didn't even have any experience up to that point. But it was just all Logi, and it was a lot of fun.
So, how do you go from like how many years did you spend in Pospy? I guess.
Oh boy,
3, 4 years.
Yeah, I think no more.
You can just guess. You don't have to
more than
your
3
bio.
years. Yeah, to be honest, I don't even log into it now, but it's no more than 3 years. Originally, one of my very good friends, Croesus, did pretty much all the FCing when I first joined that Wormhole Corp. We lived in a C2 with the high 6 attic and C4, and he did pretty much all of the FCing. But eventually, there comes times when there's a fight to take, but no one's around, and I'm someone who hates missing opportunity more than anything else. So
Yeah.
it's just like there's the things to do, and let's go do it. That's the priority, is doing it. So I kind of just got into it naturally when there were things just to do.
It's still more fun to try and fail than it is to not try at all.
I would rather whelp a fleet than miss an opportunity.
Yeah.
So he gets you started in FCing. And then where did you go from there? Like, what did you start off FCing in a C2 with a high sec 4 static?
I'm curious to know, like, how did that first fight go? Out of interest, that first time when you're like fucking, when you can literally feel yourself sweating adrenaline, and like everything seems like it's moving incredibly slow and also incredibly fast. Or at least that was my first experience of it, where it's just like really just barely keeping a lid on the level of panic that I was actually feeling about being in FC. So, like, how do you remember that first fight? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do, and it was a roam into low sec. Actually, I think we were in Vexers or some kind of armor ship of that nature, and of course, it called Secede Seaside. I think that was where we had the fight. If you're familiar with that system, everybody calls it Seaside the first time they see it, and I remember being just so focused on just calling the primary, and I didn't look at anything else in the grid. I didn't do anything else. I just looked at him, and I just maximum tunnel vision. And then all of a sudden, like half the fleet was dead. Gay guns just kind of wrecked everybody. I think we killed maybe one ship, so it was kind of not very good. And I think it's very very clear that new FCs tend to tunnel vision extraordinarily.
It's one of those things. It takes so long for you to see the whole board. Is one of the things I remember. I used to say that a lot when I was backseating UFCs. It's like, you have to kind of be able to kind of pull back a little bit just from like the microcosm of like, we need to kill this guy, and see like all of these very ridiculous number of variables that you have to kind of deal with when you're in FC.
I think that's a very good point, and we're already going to go off topic. So just sorry,
Yeah,
we're going down this hole. So
Yeah.
what happens for really good FCs is they understand what they can't manage, but still recognize it's important that somebody manages it, and then they pick the right person to manage that. So, for example, back when dock workers were in Curse and we had our head GB dread fight, just to give some background of that, we were just deployed to Curse. I didn't really have much of a plan at the time. I just knew if we put ourselves there, we would be able to make things happen. I brought our Kiki fleet zealots, and we just suitcased them in dreads. And the plan was for head GP. This was at one of the earlier days within World War B2. I guess that's appropriate to call it. I don't know, but
Yeah.
So this was before Delve was really under attack. So this is, initiative. What they did is that it's really not too hard for them to gate from Fountain through forgetting the one region in between. There's a little bit of high sec there in Keppers. It's really not hard for them to get there, just to gate, and none of them are really criminal, I think. So it's pretty simple. So the idea was, we're just going to have bring a Munid fleet, and just Intosis the iHub TCU, shoot a jump bridge, just make a lot of noise to get a lot of attention. They did that previously with Gilas, and we saw Legacy put on grid a very engageable looking cap fleet. So what we did is we snuck in, not through U-Q, that regional curse gate. There's a different one that you can take that's more far east. We safe logged at a ping on a different regional gate from Curse into Catch. I don't remember exactly which one, but then the Munids get in there, and then I don't remember what exactly Legacy pre-pinged, but it was, I don't know what they pinged, and they brought in their own hack fleet, and then the carriers came. And one of my biggest downfalls is speaking to what we earlier were talking about, is I didn't kind of delegate all the things that were important to, because it was FCing dreads was still something I wasn't exactly too well versed in. So
Yeah.
we signed out with 0, and one of the things I didn't do well is I didn't call for everyone to go red right away, which you need to, just in case you need to leave. You can make the choice to go in or not if everyone goes red. But if you don't make the call to go red before your 5 minutes is up, well, then your choice is already made for you. So having someone do that as well is like kind of like a secondary responsibility. I didn't really do that well.
It's like this thing in the beginning where you have to figure out which of these things is important for me to keep track of, and which of these things is simple enough that I can take from my plate, put it on someone else's plate, and they'll still be able to accomplish these things that they have on their plate, kind of thing. And that's a difficult thing for me to figure out sometimes. Like delegating, like in a heavy armor brawl, delegating to Logi Anchor, hey man, you're going to have to figure out like which side to split off on, because things might happen really fast here, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to call you out in time to do your thing. So you're going to have to make that call on your own, and we can play this by ear, but like don't wait for me. Okay, if you see things like starting to transition to where you need to get away from me, then do that and let me know, but don't wait for me to call it. And that's something you can delegate to like the Logi Anchor or something like that. But like doing things like ammo swaps and things like that, sometimes even that, like maybe something that I forget to do, that I need to like call on someone else, be like, hey, I want you to remember, if they start getting in like T2 ammo range, you need to say something to me, because I might get tunnel vision. I might just be focused on like trying to break Logi, trying to like anchor us away from them, anchor us towards them. I just need someone else to remember that so I don't forget, because it just in general, I'm a forgetful person.
I think it's a great point, and I think who does this the best, from what I've seen, is Volta between Wolf's Dragoon and Starfleet. is they have very specific. I don't even say there's like one person FCing. It's just they like split it in two. And there might be one person, sure, has the overall direction, but one person's like calling the web targets, the ammo to load, what to do with tracking disruptors, whether you're doing tracking or optimal range disruption, and then the other one is doing the warps, the primaries, the secondaries, calling.
I mean, I think so much of this is like, I realize that this has a double meaning because it's EVE Online, but it's very difficult to be a top level FC in a vacuum. Like, if you're the only guy in the command channel and everyone's like just working off what you're doing, EVE has too many, as we've mentioned a few times here, like EVE has too much stuff to track. And I think like a lot of this comes down to, in a way, like almost nothing to do with EVE Online. It's just like good leadership tactics, like good quality leadership, which is understanding who you've got in your fleet and what their strengths are, and then putting them in the position where everyone benefits from their knowledge.
Yeah,
it's great.
So yeah,
we used to have a team like that. I remember.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can remember fleet fights where it was like, say, Baller was the FC, and you and me sitting up there in command channels, and I would be like calling things on the grid and like spotting shit if it came in close and picking out like individual targets. And you'd be like, checking ranges and checking ammos and making sure people were in the right place and staying on anchor. And it's like, if you get that like nice little leadership synergy where no one's talking over each other, everyone's working towards the same goal, it's about as like smooth and crisp as EVE ever feels, I think.
Yeah.
Like when you have those moments, and I can remember several of these, to be honest, Paula, where we've just had little moments in fleets where we'll both see the same thing at the same time, and both start moving, like, literally kind of getting the fleet set up for this without any communication between us. We'll just be like, that's it. That's the moment. That's what we need to hit.
My favorite moment of that, it wasn't even in a fleet.
Are you going to say when I was...
We are. I am.
Yes.
I know.
It's so good.
I was in I think it was a Stork, and there was an Orthus, like 100 off the gate, I think. Mm-hmm. And you were in a Citadel. And what I ran with that Boucher was just, scram web and then a single extender. And generally that gives you enough time for a standing fleet to just mop them up. But as I'm spooling with no communication, Vargas just swoops in a Citadel, takes my command destroyer Bouche, and then just starts brawling with autocannons on the Orthos, who I've scrambled.
Yeah,
and it was,
we just land on top of him.
Oh. No planning.
Yeah.
It was just, you saw the opportunity of what I was going to do, and we just went with it together without any sort of talking.
It was a beautiful moment, and honestly, it gives me goosebumps now just thinking about it. I literally goosebumps now.
I remember several times being like on like boosting fleets where the two of you would be like, do you see what I'm about to line us up for? You see, yep, I see it. Okay, all right, here we go. Spool, and then it's done. And no one had any clue what the fuck you were talking about, except you two. So that worked well.
Yeah,
everyone's like, what are we about to do?
And you just land like 30 destroyers just land on top of some poor guy.
Yeah. So
those are some of my most favorite times in EVE, those Boosh fleets, and I don't think they'll ever come back in their most true form because the numbers are over the 25 threshold, which is
I have hope.
We're allowed to do.
I have hope. I'm gonna retain that hope, no matter what anyone says, that they'll remove the ship cap.
Would love to do that. I want to do Booshing Skybreakers. Horde is doing this really cool Skybreaker fleet to fight destroyers and frigates. Because if you think about it, if you have like 50 Skybreakers and you get like a double Boosh and a bubble on like a Cormorant fleet or something like that with no tank, you're gonna evaporate that Corm fleet pretty quick.
Yeah, I agree. Like in numbers, that concept of the Edencom, like arcing wartime project
chain lightning fleet, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah,
in numbers, that seems like a scary thing, but it's just like getting those ships in numbers and then getting something that you can engage with that sort of damage. That use case just seems so narrow. But I mean, if they're fighting destroyers in it, that seems like a good use case. But yeah, that would be, you'd probably like 2 cycles some Corms.
I mean, it's just one of these things where it's like, it's going to seem like an insane idea until someone does it well. and then everyone's going to be like, "Oh, damn, that's what you're supposed to be doing with that." Like when the Stuka fleet concept came along, or like when some random FC shows up in a whole bunch of flycatchers with afterburners on them, for example. It seems crazy until someone does it and wins with it, and then you're like, "Damn, son, okay."
You're not wrong.
So I look forward to that moment where we see the Edencom ships kind of come out of the because they never really hit the mark compared to like the Triglavian ships, which were very much kind of you figured they'd be like two sides of the coin. And it's like the Triglavian ships are amazing. Like I think there's not a lot of argument there, right? We all love the Triglav ships.
Yeah.
And I don't think the Edencom ships are like anywhere close to the same level of like, damn, this is good.
But the concept is two sides of the coin. So that one of them is like single target damage over time has to spool up, and the other one is like damage over several ships, split, spread it out and instant application. So yeah. It is strange.
I mean, I look forward just to what I want to hear, if I'm honest, is what the Logicons would sound like in a fleet having to deal with that level of incoming damage.
Yeah.
Because the first volley that goes off, the amount of guys you're going to have broadcasting for reps at the same time is going to be nuts. Because, I mean, as I understand it, the way the targeting works for the beam is like after the first jump, is it by mass, I think?
Well,
or is that
that's the way the Keepstar wartime projector works. So
yeah, is it the same way? I honestly
sure
don't know.
The same thing. I didn't use the damn thing, but I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, it's based on mass and distance.
Yeah, so it's gonna be like essentially your panic button is just the panic board is just gonna be lighting up with red lights the moment that the volleys start coming in, because people aren't gonna know if they're being primaried. It's just it's gonna be very awkward because I mean you won't even have the kind of the yellow box, red box notification anymore, will you? It'll just be like if you're the second guy in that list and you're just getting hit at random. Yeah, you've got no clue. Just like I think I'm gonna die. I don't know. No one's targeting me, but I'm taking damage. Like, yeah, I look forward to it.
It's just everyone is primary.
Yeah, yeah. All 50 guys. They're all just take your pick. Roll those dice.
So we talked about Flycatcher Doctrine there just for a moment, and that brings me back to your days in Pause Party. I wonder if we could reel back to that, because it is the time that I personally am most interested in your EVE career about, because it seems like a very formative time for you. And the way that I view it is that you were an instrumental part in POSP's success when it was successful. And I want to know about that.
Yeah, eventually, as I started just FCing more in POSP, it got to the point where I really started to care about the quality of things going on. So it's like if someone comes up with an idea who was previously doing something, and I was like, we can do better than this. And when you kind of go on that kind of doctrine sort of feedback for so long, it just kind of happens naturally that you just there was never a point where someone was just like, all right, you are promoted, you are the doctrine guy, you're the mill deer, whatever, else like people call it nowadays.
Here's the hat and the medals.
It just kind of happened naturally as I just started doing things and nobody really said no. So I just kind of kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And I would watch and try and learn as much as I could from all the other different kind of FCs and what little material out there is in the community to learn from. So I did some stupid things, but everybody does when they're in their first learning. So there was some concepts that just were really quite poor, but it was some of the stuff we came up with was pretty ridiculous.
Like what?
The tier catchers is what we called them, the Tenemin light missile flycatchers. And
that's a great name.
Yeah.
So appropriate.
The idea is we always want to throw it at the biggest disorganized blob that we could, because fighting a flycatcher generally inspires confidence.
Right.
Oh yeah,
It's not known for doing lots of damage. It's known more as like as a support ship. It's not designed to shoot people, so nobody really understood its capabilities.
it's a free kill if you catch one. Was
Yeah.
the way that I always looked at it.
And that's the kind of mentality you want to inspire out of a mob. Yeah,
Right.
of space. So when there's like 50 goons on a gate in a kitchen sink, you land at range. That's the ideal thing you want to fight with, like 20 of these.
What about Snatch Fleet? Snatch Fleet, I was on Snatch Fleet several times, and that was probably my favorite thing, to see how much damage you could tank in those Fessers and Deacons.
It was definitely in my time there in Posby. It was the favorite doctrine in the Corps. Was a destroyer fleet, which I think is kind of crazy in itself to say. And this was back when you could boosh an infinite number of ships, so there was no limits. So the idea was, we're just going to use very surgical precision with booshes based on angles. For example, if, let's say, something is 100 kilometers from you, you want to be 20 kilometers off him. Well, if you just kind of on a clock go to between the 10 and 11 position, well, that's going to be about 20 to 30 kilometers. So when you do this kind of surgical precision booshing with a damage mitigation from an AB and the kind of insane resists of a Tech 3 destroyer, and then in tandem of the Deacon having kind of the same kind of tankiness to it, it made for some very hilarious fighting up that will be done with it. And I say fighting up because anything that could really apply to it would just kind of destroy it, because it was actually a double heat sink fit. So even though it looks like, when you fight it in bigger ships, it seems incredibly tanky, but in reality, a double heat sink confessor is highly squishy. And the hardest ships for us to fight in those, it was actually cormorants the whole time. There was nothing more frightening than a cormorant fleet to that. I wouldn't mind fighting hacks. I wouldn't mind fighting caracals. I wouldn't mind fighting harpies. Just a very well controlled cormorant fleet, knowing what ranges they need to be at, and knowing that I can boost to them, so they're already pre-aligned. There was I don't remember who it was, but there was one guy in a corp that was once in Brave. I think it's Beyond Frontier. That was them.
Yeah,
The
They were in. Yeah, there was one FC. I was fighting against them, and I wish I knew his name so I could give him credit right now. But he was in a very special harpy fit. It basically looked like a cormorant, where it was double range rig, basically no tank. All the tank was an ADC. Everything else was just range fits and damage. And I've never
so like 100k harpy. Yeah, I used to fly one of those myself.
And when he was the only guy I ever really had trouble against in that fleet, because he just understood the concept of movement in a fleet setting better than anybody I've ever had to fight before.
Damn, we should find his name and give him credit then.
Yeah, I wish I could, because I'd shout him out right. It's just he just would anticipate what I would do and knew what he had to do in response, and that is so rare to find in Eve right now, that it really stuck with me.
Just to talk a little bit more about the mechanics of that Bushin, like, I know not everyone is an FC and kind of understands how these things work, but I guess one of the really big advantages of it is your 1MN or your afterburner armor brawl fleet is inevitably not the speediest guys out there. They're sig tanking, they're reducing damage by like being tiny and having good resists, so it's very difficult to kind of like track with larger weapon types. And the problem inevitably with that kind of fleet is getting it into the location it needs to be without losing your entire fleet while doing it. And the Boosh very much provides, it's kind of like you cut out that distance where you are incredibly vulnerable, like that kind of 100k down to 20k when you're just trying to get in close to them. So it's kind of like it's like a much better version of just warping onto the target because it's instant and you're right there and suddenly the fight's on. But yeah, go on.
I was gonna say it's back to the concept of movement to me in a fleet setting, and I think there's nothing more critical for an FC to learn than just proper movement. And by that I mean, what happens if you fleet warp? What distances does he want to be at? Where do you want to be at? Where is he going to be moving that's more beneficial for him, and how does that go back to you? And it just cuts out so much time when you can just instantly boosh. Everyone is already anchored, which is the other pretty big part when you're in a multi-boxing heavy fleet. So it just solved so many problems just being able to boosh. And one thing that we kind of discovered that I think it took a little bit longer for other groups to do is that bumping doesn't matter if you were already moving it near full velocity, because everyone's already going to be pointing in the same direction anyway. So yes, there will be a little bit of variance with the bumping, but it's only about 20% of an angle that will be in the variance. So you could still do it, pretty decently reliably and get where you need to go. And we were never really big into spearfishing either. We only had to do it a couple of times. The booshing, it was all just to get the exact position that I know we would be at, or need to be at in order for us to have, the best performance.
Yeah, like under their guns in perfect range for you, sitting exactly where you need to be.
One other time that I want to bring up too, because you did mention a very serious concern of being in an afterburning doctrine and being able to be bubbled, because you can also boosh the bubble with you if you're not careful. And there was one time where I was in Brave, I was running from I don't even know what, but it was basically it was time to leave. That's the important.
Yeah.
And on our way back home in Catch, what I did is in advance we ring chased, so I had a scepter warp at 100, get me a side warp in, and a dictor basically warp at 0. So we initiate warp to the scepter at a bit to 100 to the side. We bubble up actually in advance before I warp, but the bubble wasn't in line with the scepter. So then this is back before booshing gave aggression, which I really hate that change. But
Yeah.
What it allowed you to do is you could warp to 100 on a gate basically, however, just to the scepter who is at 100, not in line with a bubble, and then you boosh in, and then everyone's at 0 on the gate, and you have the bubble defending you that didn't slow you down really in any way.
Yeah.
So doing stuff like that was just so satisfying with booshing. There was such a high skill cap that was that booshing allowed you to overcome. That I really miss it.
Yeah, it's a shame to think that some of the awesome stuff that happened in those boosh fleets really you just can't do it anymore because of the change in mechanics to it, and it feels like an unnecessary loss. I it never felt unfair because we died in a ball of fire as often as we get things right. Like it wasn't like overly uncommon for everyone in the fleet to just wake up in a pod. So it's not like it was this invincible kind of god mode way of playing, but damn, it was like so dynamic and exciting, and when it worked it was incredible, and when it didn't it was hilarious. So yeah, I feel like the game has lost something since then.
There's maybe a world where I would not have left Brave if I could still run Baller Tower fleets, which is the name of all the fleets I did. Is I would just put the word baller in front and the ship type, because my team's name was Baller Tom. And if CCP didn't remove the possibility from the game, there might be a world where I'm still in Brave right now.
I never missed a baller fleet.
Oh, I missed that saying.
Yeah, I'm sure you don't have any more tunes in Brave, right?
No.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think Who is still trying to glean knowledge on what turned you from this fresh-faced Logi pilot into the ruthless space killer that you are today.
For me,
because you went to being like a director in Boss Party.
Yeah, eventually, and I think that's kind of a natural progression for anyone who just FCs a lot. Like, you know what? Who? I bet this happened to you. I bet you're a director now in
Worse.
society.
I'm
Was
the
Worse.
CEO of my own
The worst.
corporation.
He's
I've made my
the
own corporation.
CEO, bro.
I've made my corporation.
no.
Yeah.
It's sorry. My more point was it's in middle-sized groups, mid-sized groups. I don't know the word. You know,
Yeah.
when groups who normally field under 50 people in a fleet, it's very natural for people who are in kind of FC positions to be kind of eventually moved into a director role just because of the associated leadership with that. So eventually it did happen to me where I just became a director one day. I never asked for it, and it was kind of just a thing that made sense at the time for it to be offered to me. So eventually, yeah, I did move into a director position with Hospi.
Because the more that you provide content for dudes, so the way I see it is that there's several types of leadership, but the way that I see it, there's cultural leadership and there's content leadership. And of those two things, most of the time you would find like for instance, you could say that Dunk Dinkle would be cultural leadership in Brave. And you could say that like Shattered Armor would have been content leadership in Brave. And the same would be said about you. I would imagine that you were content leadership. You were providing content for the people in Pause Party. But then I also feel like you were cultural leadership as well. You were sort of synonymous with the name Pause Party for many of us for a long time. So I'm curious to know what happened, and maybe you don't want to talk about it, but I am curious to know what happened in Pause Party that made you leave.
Biggest thing is I felt I was. Or actually, I'm going to say there's two things. I'll just say there's two big things. The first is I was kind of over the fact that I was responsible for too much, and when you try and get help for so long and it just doesn't happen, eventually you just like, all right, I'm done with it. that was part of it. It was that sort of fatigue, because for a long time, like, I did SRP. It was just me. In addition to running pretty much all the fleets and managing all of the doctrines and setting up all of the home defense, and
shit just turns into a job. It's just you're doing so many of the non-fun jobs.
Yeah.
Thing I wasn't really involved in was any of the IT stuff, and I wasn't really involved in any of the recruitment.
So one thing.
Actually, I want to add one more thing.
I was going to say that was one of two.
Yeah, there was a part two to that, so I'm sorry. I wanted to get into it too. Is the other thing is that I just wanted access to new opportunity. I think wormhole space got very bland for me, and people out there will say, "Well, you lived in a C4. Yeah, of course it's going to be that way." But, really, the C5 space. It's like, is it really that much different? I was looking for something, and people would be like, "What the cap fights now?" It's just a slightly more scaled, version of what I was doing. So I wanted completely new opportunities. So those are the two biggest reasons why I had to leave.
So I've encountered this before, and the way you describe it, at least, where and even then I wasn't a director. I wasn't even in any sort of real official leadership role in our old corp. But sort of the same thing happened. That corp is essentially a dead corp now. And I think what happened was the people who were actually the cultural and content leaders in that corp weren't actually sort of given director roles, and actually what's the word I'm looking for? Were actually like sort of accounted as leadership in the corp. And so you have dudes who would provide content, who would provide cultural leadership, who would keep the corp alive, essentially. And then you'd have dudes in leadership who would not be doing any of those things and would be sort of reaping the benefits of being leadership. Not that there are many benefits of that, but also being like the final say in things, and saying like, no, we're not going to do that. but you're not providing an example. You're not leading anyone to do anything differently. So what you're saying is like it's okay for your dudes that are in this position to do the things that are positive for the corp, until you don't like it, but you're not going to do anything about it. You're just going to say no, and that's not leadership. That's not anything that's helpful to anyone, really. You're just a person that says no.
It's something that's always kind of made me laugh in Eve, because leadership kind of means two things, where it's either that you are someone with an actual position in leadership of the alliance or corp or whatever it is, or it's that you're someone that has actual leadership qualities required for EVE Online. So that's like, good understanding of the game and its mechanics, a lot of experience. Like if it's kind of FC leadership, then it's like an awful lot of kills, a lot of combat, like, all the mechanics, how it works, how fights are supposed to go. And it's also like being confident enough to be that guy and step up and say, this is what we need to do. This is how we solve this problem. Anchor up on me, let's get it done. To kind of like put that foot forward. And a lot of people in EVE Online think those are both the same thing. Like they assume that if you are made leadership of a corp or an alliance, that the other things come with it. And I always felt very much the other way around. And it's kind of like what Baller just said there about, he eventually kind of got made director just because it made sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And in my head, that's like the right way around. Because essentially, I, like, rather famously in Brave, would never FC anything that I didn't think would be a fun thing to do. Like I'd never ping the strat up. I'd never go and bash some boring fort or do something like that, because it's just like I just couldn't stand it. But I got made like senior F, like God knows what my eventual rank was in Brave, essentially just because I would keep doing all of the things that I associated with good leadership, which was much the same as you guys, where it's like provide fun content, give a crap about the people in your fleet, like care about them having a good time, and just generally wanting to have a good time in your fleet. And the way you have a good time in your fleet is you kill lots of stuff and you have fun. So yeah, it's a difficult one to kind of to fall into. And I think a lot of people fall into this trap where you assume that all of the other stuff comes with it. And that the truth is that you don't need a position of leadership. You don't need a rank. You don't need any of the other stuff that comes with it. That you can absolutely be the strongest possible FC or leader or whatever. And it doesn't require anybody else's input other than kind of you just proving to the other people that you're in comms with that you are the guy that can do this. And I think it's important to come at it from that angle. For anyone that's kind of like an aspiring FC or, wants to step up, it's like, don't do it for the sake of being in charge of people and wanting to be like, an officer or like, an FC or something like that. You do it for the sake of, this is fun and I want to make fun content for me and my friends so that it generates great memories at the end of the day.
I think that that's something that exists even outside of EVE. There's this fallacy where you'll see someone in a leadership position and you'll see people that look up to them or admire them or respect them, or give them credit. And you say to yourself, I want to be in that position where I get admired and given credit, and be respected. So I need to get there, whatever I need to do to get there so I can get that. That's what I'm going to do. But they don't look at like why that person's there in the first place. And it's not because the person's not getting credit because they're a director. They're not getting respect because they're a director. They're not getting admiration because they're a director. They're getting admiration, respect, and credit because they're doing good leadership things. They're leading by example. They're providing content where sometimes it may be tedious work. And so you get credit for doing things that are not fun, but you're providing fun for others. And that's like my word of caution is like, if you're in this game and you're like, you know what, I want to be a cool FC or I want to be a CEO or director, think about like what it means to actually be that and look at the impact those people are having on the people around them. Don't just look at like, I want to do that thing in this game. Look at like, do you want to do the things that person does to get there? Because I found people that have just been put in like leadership positions just because they wanted to be leadership, and that's ultimately resulted in like the death of the group that they're in. So anyways, I went off on a tangent there. I rage against like bad leadership in this game. I absolutely rage against bad leadership in this game. It is my number one, I don't know, pet peeve maybe, thing that I rage against. I don't like it. And that's from like a almost lifetime now of like being in some form of leadership or another over people, whether it be real life or the game, and seeing what bad leadership can become, and wanting to avoid that at all costs. Anyways, I've rambled there for a bit, so go ahead, Val.
Yeah, I'll even expand on it on this whole leadership conversation as well, and some things that I've seen that are always really disheartening is when people follow the group they've been loyal to, even though the leaderships may be leading them astray, leading down a not a good path, but they're following it just because they've been loyal to that group. And I think there could have been an argument made that because there wasn't really any good appropriate leadership left, or rather, I shouldn't say leadership. There wasn't any good like content creating FCs. When I left Pospey's, I think there may have been a very much so more reasonable conversation to have about actually closing the alliance. When I left, and what made it really sad when it was decided to keep going is that all the people were kind of hanging on to their loyalty within the group, and it's like people were likely kind of sad about the state of things, even though their loyalty was telling them that they should stay. So
it's hard to let that go though, isn't it?
It is, especially when it's been something you've had for years. But I don't know. Looking back, I think possibly likely should have just closed.
Yeah, I've seen the thing you're talking about, and that's like associating the fun that you're having, or the good times, or the good experiences that you're having with the wrong sort of thing. So like in my corporation now, we are all friends playing video games, right? And the only thing that matters to me in that equation that is like an Eve corporation where we're friends playing video games is keeping my friends happy playing the video game that they're playing. So like keeping them in a hole with structures up is secondary to keeping my dudes happy in playing the video game. Keeping them with ISK in their pockets is secondary to me keeping them happy and playing the video game. And maybe that makes them happy. And so maybe that bumps up the priority of that. Keeping their ships alive rather than whelping their ships in a fleet is secondary to me keeping them happy and in a video game. So like we can get evicted. We could lose all of our ISK. We could lose all of our ships. But as long as my dudes are happy in this game, then I've accomplished my mission as CEO. Whatever that form that takes for them individually or as a group, as long as I can keep them happy in this game, that's all my goal is. And I think some people would look at that like as being either a leader of a group or in a group and say like, my dudes are happy right now, and I think it's because we haven't been evicted. So I want to put all of our emphasis on like eviction proofing ourselves. Or they'll say like, my dudes are happy right now and they have ISK in their wallets. I think it's because they have ISK in their wallets. So I'm going to make that number one priority is keeping my dudes with ISK in their wallets. And that means sacrifice.
Even seeing through the right eyes, even being evicted can be a great time.
Right, sure.
Like
absolutely.
You can have a lot of fun in that.
Yeah. But like some dudes will put a priority on making sure everyone has ISK all the time. And they'll say, I just want you guys to be rich. And everyone's like, yeah, we're rich, but we haven't like gone on a fleet and like whelped any ships in like 2 weeks. We've been just crabbing the whole time. And that's, it's a false, I guess a false equivalency. I'm not sure if that's the right word to use there, but like it's basically associating the wrong things with what makes you successful in this game. So again, like I think those priorities get screwed up sometimes, and that leads to like uh, corpse sort of dying. And I know we keep talking about like leadership and corpse sort of dying here, um, but that's recently is some of you may have known like Pos Party got evicted, um, and I know that that probably hit home for you a little bit, Val.
I logged in. I had a tornado tune that was still in corp, so I logged in on one of the Fortizar timers that they actually undocked in. All 12 of them undocked. And I got to I went on their team speak. Didn't even tell them that I was showing up or anything like that, and it was just there to try and support them. And it was you've never seen a more calm and smiling group of people than in that moment.
When you showed up, you mean?
Or no, just in general, it wasn't because of me. It was just because of just kind of everyone's attitude. It's people kind of accepted and written off what was happening. They knew it was kind of over anyway, so it was more of like a let's undock for fun and do this one final thing as a group in this wormhole. And it was it was a really really cool atmosphere to feel a part of.
You go out on a positive note, and it's honestly like it's so much more important to take that attitude rather than just be like, okay, we can't win this fight. We're just gonna run away and try to save our money, and it's gonna be a disappointing day for everyone. It's like, no, go out with a bang, have some fun with it. Like it's just video games.
I do want to expand something on who said
Yeah.
here, and I think it summarizes your point pretty well, I think, anyway. And it's that you can't let an existential threat to your existence hinder everyday fun. An example of that is, let's say you can spend 100 bill on home defense ships that may be used once in 3 years, or you could use that 100 bill to, I don't know, seed someone's hostiles home with dreads, or you can give everyone a free nightmare and do a nightmare fleet. It's you can't let the everyday fun be hindered by an existential threat.
Because the everyday fun is the point. Yeah.
I often like envy sort of nomadic groups in this game. People that don't actually have like a home anywhere, or maybe they just like stage their things out of like some NPC station somewhere random. But like I've seen groups in wormhole space that just go around sort of evicting small groups, or that just go around doing like living out of an orca, doing like small gang stuff. And I sort of envy them a little bit because they don't have that attachment to a home where they feel like they need to protect it and have all their assets safe, and they're just going around having fun. And that's something that's unique, I think, in this game, that you don't see that very often, and I like that. Yeah.
So speaking around, the nice little segue opportunity there, which is speaking about going around and having fun.
Yeah.
You left Pospey, and then was it dock workers came next? Or was there something in between?
So dock workers at the time wasn't even an alliance. So I joined Did He Say Jump, which is a corp that eventually made the alliance dock workers. So I guess you can say it, just timeline is just a little different.
Yeah.
I went on one fleet with Predator Elite and was like, all right, well, my goal is I want to find a reasonably neutral group to the rest of the game. And I didn't want to do null, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna try Losec or I'm gonna go to Thera. I'm gonna do one of the two. And I also wanted to just be a part of a group where I wasn't the only FC anymore. That was something very important to me. And I literally just took a shot in the dark. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna try it, see how it is. And I'm still here, so there have been some great times.
So, I mean, yeah. Take us through then. So you leave Pospey, you try Did He Say Jump, and like what? So what are they doing at the time? Is it like relatively small scale, like low sec stuff? Because I mean, I'm looking at the dock workers kill build right now, and you're definitely murdering your way through an awful lot of things. You're busy. You're a busy alliance. Like,
Yeah.
was it, how did what was the transition here? Like, what was Did He Say Jump doing at the time when you joined?
Yeah, they were living in a system called Coromona. And it's like 5 or 6 jumps from Amar, 2 jumps from Amamake, so it's right in that area.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just a mix of fighting whatever fleets we can find, and then doing just small gang for the rest of the time. And that was most of it when I originally joined. Um, Predator Elite was the main FC and CEO at the time, and I even remember in my I actually had an interview. It's not too common anymore to have an interview in Jump, my corp, but I did at the time with one both Pred, as I call him, and then another guy named Colonel, who both have been around for ages. And I told them, I was like, I want to come here and I want to FC. I don't want to. I don't. That doesn't mean I want to do everything, but I'm looking for an independent group where I can just do things and FC. And there was some skepticism at the start because when you say that, you pretty much can't avoid coming across as some cocky know-it-all guy,
Yeah.
being like, "Oh, who's this guy? He thinks he can just come in here and start leading fleets? What is this?" Like you can't
Yeah.
avoid that kind of uh, message when in an interview when you say I just want to FC, because normally what happens is if you're an established FC in Null or anything like that, you don't even talk to recruiters. You go straight to the FCs you already have a rapport with in that alliance, and you don't even talk to recruiters. And
Yeah.
so that whole conversation kind of gets skipped in those groups, but for this it was just that. So and
Just as random. So, like, you didn't really know them before then, like at all? Was there like a connection for you there, or was this
almost
just
none.
like a random? Okay.
There was maybe 2 interactions I had ever had with Pred. I saw a couple videos on YouTube, which by the way, good videos on YouTube is my opinion the best source of recruitment, because
I so agree.
Yeah.
you get to show off your more epic moments and you get to show off what your group tries to do. So to anybody out there trying to recruit more people, making videos of your routine content is the best thing to do.
Good advice there.
Yeah.
So you come in as this fucking big-headed hotshot. Who the fuck is this guy? Wants to FC?
Whoa. All right. Calm down. There.
Yeah, because like
True.
Okay.
that's how they would fit. Like, that's I fucking guarantee you that's at least what some people were thinking. They were like, who the fuck is this guy? Thinks he's like some hot shit or whatever. He's just gonna whelp a fleet. Let's stand back and watch him fuck up.
I've heard who the fuck is this is hot shit.
So you go in, like, you just ping a fleet and off you go. Like, what's the setup here?
Well, like anyone trying to develop as an FC within a group, your first couple pings, they're not going to be like how the established FCs ping. There's going to be a far lower turnout. For example, in Brave, my first fleet, I had like 7 people, and in Jump, my first fleet ping, it was like Caracals and Oracles, and we were just going to go into Pravi and like have some scepters and stuff like that. The classic nano, where you just anti-support and some DPS ships and some tackle ships. I had maybe 7 people in that fleet too, but you just eventually keep pinging and building rapport and doing all the things that we all talk about, not wasting people's time, showing people respect, having a reasonable plan of both how to fight and how to have fun, because those 2 are like, the most crucial. But it took a little while, for maybe like a month. And then at some point in the summer of 2020, I think it was, we had an actual low sec war, which doesn't really happen too much. That those are words not really
that's
that's
a rarity.
a lot. But we were on an eviction to rather remove shoot first from
That's right.
from Genesis and the associated regions there. And those were some of my first big fleets within Did He Say Jump. This was before Dock Workers was a thing. So the idea is, because of all the high sec in the way, and that we're all a bunch of criminals. -10, we can't go through without Concord really getting us. You can go through Inceptors, but you can't bring combat ships. So on all the timers, I would scan wormholes pretty pretty much every day. And the first, I remember the 2 fleets that I got to run were really fun. The first one was a defensive timer on an Astra house, and we had a battleship capable wormhole. By that I mean a 3 bill mass. So you bring a fair number of battleships through, and we were fighting shoot first and someone else they bat phoned, and it was so cool because that was one of the first fights where I got to use battleships with substantial amount of webs to help dreads apply. Some of them were Ha, some of them were XL, and you can make XL dreads hit subs as long as you have the right setup. I actually hold the position in the game that you can make any weapon type apply to any ship as long as you have the right setup. as long as you set it up right, you can make anything hit anything.
Enough paints and webs, and you can do anything.
One of the funnier clips I've ever seen was it was on Pando's it's the Initiative FC stream. He had a highlight of an AB shield tanked bomber, had a hardener, an AB, and a medium extender, and he just got one shot by like some beam avatar at like 200 kilometers, and you're just like, what is this? So really, you can make anything hit anything with enough effort and the proper positioning. So it was being able to do that for the first time was a lot of fun.
Tracking
that
avatars.
was my
That's
first.
So
Yeah, it was stupid. And beam avatar too. It wasn't even like a Ha thing.
right.
That's one of those special kill mails that you treasure, though. So yeah, so this is still all operating as did he say jump? At what point were you part of the decision to turn this into an alliance to kind of grow? Like what, how did this happen?
I wasn't actually in the decision making for it because at the time I wasn't in any kind of leadership position. I was just another guy pinging fleets with Pred. That was it. It was just pretty much just me and Pred and not really anybody else for FCs. And at some point it just kind of happened when we had when Snuff had their first death. I say first, I don't know if they've ever went away into silence before, but recently their first death, one of their US time zone corps, Sanctuary of Shadows, SASH for short, if I call it, they wanted to join us, and at that point it just kind of made sense that we would just have to have an alliance, for them to be with us, because they didn't want to just individually put all their people in. They wanted to keep their corp together because they've been playing together for I don't know however many years, probably 10 years at least by now. So they wanted to keep what they had going, and so eventually Dockworkers became the birth out of kind of necessity for that. And I love Sash. They're still around to this day. They bring such an incredible depth of experience, and a lot of them are just really cool people. So it's been great having them around, and it was definitely the right call making an alliance.
So at this point,
you must be a director, right?
Well, I'm in the leadership channels, but I'm in all of the leadership channels, but I'm not a director.
Avoid it for as long as possible. That's always my advice.
Because
the same
I feel
thing
like
happened earlier, that it happens naturally. I didn't
exactly.
put it in leadership channels. It's given to you when it makes sense to be given to you. You should never ask for it.
Right. And given everything I know about you, it makes sense for you to be in the leadership position there, because everywhere you go, you have this Midas touch of providing both excellent culture and content to the people around you. And I commend you for that, because I think you do an excellent job of it.
Oh, thank you.
Aww.
That kind of that kind of brings us to a natural close. As we're running a bit over time. Yeah, so I've been kind of lazy about the podcast, and as such, we are Eve partners. And as part of the partnership program, we get skins to give out. So I have a bunch of skins to give to you guys. I have both Caracal and Estero skins to give away, and I have lots of them. So I think the best thing to do is for you guys to comment on the Reddit post and upvote the Reddit post, and I will send you a DM through Reddit, or you can DM me your in-game Eve name if you'd like, and I will send you the code for the skin. So I have like, looks like about 40 of them in total to hand out. So again, this is going to have Reddit posts associated with it. Go onto Reddit under REve, look for the Reddit post, give it an upvote, give it a comment, and I'll send you a skin. So I think that's about it. Does anyone else have anything for the good of the group?
Oh, I'll put in a final word. There's been something I've been thinking about doing for a long time that I think has been missing from the Eve community for basically forever, and it's there's basically no resources for up and coming FCs. So this is something I've been sitting on for a long time. Is kind of making my own weekly YouTube thing about. Some of it might just be audio only. Some of it might just be analysis of a fleet fight. But I want to get into the content at some point of making resources for up and coming FCs, because there's a lot of people who want to get into FC but just don't have the confidence for it, and there's people who are who are having the FC titles but have basically no support for developing. So at some point very soon, I likely will be getting involved in that directly, in making my own YouTube content to help new FCs.
If you were to ask me completely out of the blue with no preparation and without having talked to you before who I would choose in EVE Online to make those videos, you would be my choice.
Yep.
So I really do look forward to that. I'm
For sure.
I already know they're going to be great, so please do follow through on this idea.
To me, it's no different than talking sports. You know, I love the conversation of movement, of ship matchups, of the sociology, because I think fleet PvP is actually half math and half understanding people.
Psychology,
so,
yeah.
So like
Yeah.
I love talking about that, about the whole spectrum of topics in that. So it's something I'll likely be doing very soon.
I look forward to that as well. So that's going to be it for this episode of Primary Target. Make sure you tune into the next episode. And until then, fly fast. See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.